When I graduated from the University of Toronto, hardly would I have imagined that the green space at the school's King's College Circle, where myself and other students walked across in single file as part of a graduation tradition, would on the same day years later serve as a key and prolonged site of pro-Palestinian protest, let alone in the form of an encampment. But that's just what it became, established by University of Toronto students and their allies in early May. In doing so, not only were they challenging the ceremonial significance of the green space, they were more concretely making a demand on the school administration, namely that the University of Toronto disclose and divest from all entities, such as banks that invest in weapons manufacturers, fueling Israeli violence against the Palestinian people. That includes, of course, the ongoing genocidal assault in Gaza. Wanting to know more and gain a better understanding of the goals of those at the encampment, I went to speak to some.
So we are on day 56 of the University of Toronto's encampment here at King's College Circle, demanding the University of Toronto divest from weapons manufacturing companies complicit in Israeli apartheid. And we are currently waiting on an injunction. The U of T went to the courts to seek an injunction to compel the courts to call the Toronto police to come clear this encampment instead of ending their complicity as genocide. And so we are in the process of waiting to hear back on that ruling. Thus far, we've had dozens of meetings with admin administrators at U of T and haven't seen really any sort of progress on our demands. But we are steadfast in our commitment to Palestinian liberation and to getting divestment.
Mm-hmm. And what's your feeling about what the outcome of the court proceedings are going to be?
Yeah, so we'll kind of have to wait and see. I think that the judge is really taking his time in terms of deliberating, and the motion that U of T put forth is truly quite absurd. They essentially are trying to say that you need an authorization to have any protests on campus or any roads that lead to campus, which includes College Street, where there's lots of citywide protests. So, that definitely I think is a bit outlandish and absurd, and we'll kind of have to see sort of where the judge lands. But it's entirely possible that they compel the court compels police to come here and clear this encampment. But it's also possible that the judge rules in our favor, and we're just kind of gonna have to wait and see. Ultimately, again, it is U of T that went to the courts to seek this injunction simply because they refused to end their complicity in the genocide.
So how long are the demonstrators planning on staying here?
So we have been here for 56 days. I've been here since day one on May 2nd, as have many others. And the movement for divestment from Israeli apartheid at this campus began in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And so students have been making these demands long before this encampment. Students will continue to make these demands long after. And we are taking it day by day and sort of assessing the situation.
I feel that within mainstream media, at least in Canada, the anti-Palestinian pushback has been understated or underplayed. I'm just wondering if you can speak to that. Has there been that kind of pushback here?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been dealing, with 56 days. We've had our handful of, pro-Israel agitators that have come to the fence, people who have wielded knives, yelled horrific, horrible things to Jewish students who are here at this encampment standing in solidarity. Palestinian students who are here have, had horrible things yelled at them. People are, being harassed online because of this, and U of T has really done nothing to address any of that. In fact, they've actually, played into that narrative. They submitted over 2,000 pages of documents to the court in the injunction proceedings, many of which include sort of, vague allegations or this kind of vague idea that by virtue of existing, this encampment is hateful, that it incites hate, and that itself is anti-Palestinian racism. And you're right in the sense that that's not something that's often discussed or acknowledged. And it's really important to acknowledge that. And U of T has a long history of anti-Palestinian racism. Back in 2021, U of T rescinded a job offer to a lawyer for their human rights division of the U of T Law School, simply for her work on pro-Palestine human rights. So, this is a long-standing issue at the University of Toronto.
What keeps you here in the face of all this opposition?
Yeah, so I think that, we're here because we have no other option, right? There's an ongoing active genocide happening right now. We're witnessing Rafah be bombed right now. I myself am a student of this university. I just recently graduated, paid tuition for the past 4 years. And, just to know that my tuition dollars go towards funding the weapons and bombs that are used to murder Palestinians is horrific. So as a student, as a human being, we have a right to stand up and demand better of our institution and demand divestment. And so that's why I'm here. That's why many students are here, simply because they had no other choice.
I saw up close what Erin's talking about on the first day of the encampment. That's when I caught the footage you see here. Already, the anti-Palestinian animus, or rather hate, that would quite literally surround the encampment for weeks was palpable.
Literally ate all the food outside the Palestine. Yeah, come on, face is disgusting. Do you support all terrorists or just the ones that mass rape Jewish girls? Like, please, someone tell me. What do you support? Just those. Because they can't get any of those guys up there.
Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Do you support terrorists or just Hamas? Just Hamas that rapes Jewish girls?
Palestine! We will not stop, we will not rest. War.
I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what Jewish-Palestinian solidarity here at this encampment has looked like so far.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's been such a diverse camp experience to begin with, not just beyond Jews, but the Jewish contingency here has been really, really strong. There has been every Friday night there's a Shabbat service, which is a ritual in the Jewish tradition, bringing in the Sabbath, which has been really it has been here now for 8 straight weeks. It's been incredibly popular. It has been a really kind of multi-faith effort. And then there are a lot of Jewish campers that are here that have also been standing at the forefront of the movement, as we've seen pretty much globally.
Yes.
A lot of places where Jews are kind of have a really strong contingency. So it's been really great to see. Yeah.
You've been doing a lot of the media coordination.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if you could comment on the kinds of outlets that have been coming here, the sorts of party, who is taking interest in this? Is it for always, would you say, the right reasons, or?
Yeah, I think largely it has been for the right reasons. We've had interest from all over the globe to interview the students. They have been on, major international channels. And there's been just a lot of fascination about this particular encampment because Toronto is such a diverse city, and the University of Toronto is, considered the Harvard of the North. So what happens here is really critical. There's also just been a lot of interest because of the size of this encampment. It's one of the largest in North America. It's certainly the largest in North America space-wise.
Right.
And it's also just grown tremendously. So, there's been just really an outpouring of interest.
Do you feel that this can turn into something potentially even bigger that speaks to the universality of humanity and the rights of all?
I hope so.
Yes.
I think the students, as students do in movements in all time, they lead the way and show us what's possible.
Yes.
And I think that's really the point behind these encampments, is to show people what coexistence can look like, show people what freedom and liberation can look like, and also to show people what resistance looks like.
Yes.
Right? I think University of Toronto has proven to be a formidable adversary. They have not been, willing to negotiate very far on the demands, and so these students have remained super principled.
Yes.
They have seen what has happened at other schools, and they have calculated all of this and have taken all of the administration's responses into consideration.
Great.
And are not prepared to just kind of take breadcrumbs. Right. They're here for divestment.
I wonder actually if you could comment more on what you were just saying about resistance, because visually when you look at this, at first glance at least, it's stationary. I mean, you look at all the tents and it's stationary, but resistance conveys movement. So could you maybe speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for the Palestinian people in particular, their existence is resistance, right? Literally by virtue of existing in just about every space in the world, it is resistance, because they are up against a power structure that is hell-bent against them.
Right.
And so this encampment, just by being here, has been a major force of resistance. It has been a thorn in the university's side. It has forced conversations. It has forced the university to come to the negotiating table and to utter the word Palestine,
Yes.
which they haven't been willing to do in the past 20 years that students have been trying. They've never been at the negotiating table, let alone uttering the words Palestine. And so I think this encampment has proven really successful as a mobilization tool and as a tool to get the power structure to start bending its ways and to start to realize that really the people at large are with the encampment.
Right.
People at large are with the Palestinian people. They're not with the administration, right? They're
Yes.
not. And so yeah, it's super powerful to watch, and I've been just so in awe of the students.
Yes.
They are incredible. They are each individual resistors, and
Yes.
collectively they're resistors. They have studied Palestinian resistance. They know what they're in for, and they look at this as, this encampment is one tactic
Right.
in a toolbox of tactics. And whatever this brings, this will bring, but it's just the beginning.
Yes.
Like university, and what I can tell you for sure
Right.
is that University of Toronto will disclose and it will divest. The question is not if,
Right.
but when. And University of Toronto has a history of being the very last. Like in South African apartheid, they were the last to disclose and divest in South African apartheid. And if that's the reputation they want to maintain, of being the last and the worst, so be it. But they're going to disclose and they're going to divest and they're going to cut ties with Israeli institutions. Yeah.
You mentioned the word awe, which I think is very
Yeah.
telling. Do you have any insight into where this sort of impetus for this resistance is coming from among these students? It's an interesting kind of contrast or contradiction I feel that we're seeing. This has traditionally been a site of prestige, the University of Toronto. Yet you have these students here who are clearly willing to put Palestine first
Yeah.
before their own career paths, let's say, or quote unquote making it.
Yeah.
Where do you think, I mean, that I feel cannot be taken for granted. Where do you think
No.
that comes from?
I think it's generational.
Yes.
I think this generation has seen what's happened to the generations above them, and they're not impressed.
Yes.
They're depressed by it. Secondly, there are a lot of Palestinian students at this encampment and at the school. And so for students here, it's both first degree personal, and for many others, it's second and third degree personal, in the sense that as a student here, you're now understanding that your tuition dollars are actively being used to kill your friends' family back home in Palestine. Right? And so the link is very immediate.
Yes.
And we have students here who have lost a lot of family members in Palestine
Yes.
and in Gaza. And it's treacherous. And I think they're not having it, and they're not going to have it. They're on a different mental trajectory, and their desire first and foremost is, you cannot go around willy-nilly killing people because it makes a profit to you. Have faith in the students. They know what they're doing.
Yes.
And the playbook may not look traditional to many older adults.
Yes.
But they're in it for the right reasons. They're super principled, and I think we're going to see some amazing things from them.
Yes. Calliope, you've been here since the beginning of the encampment. I'm just wondering if you can speak to what you've seen happen since, progress, changes.
Yeah, so we've been here for 56 days now. A lot has evolved throughout the encampment. So when we arrived at 4 a.m. on May 2nd, we were about 50 to 70 students, and then now we've reached about 170 students, about 177 tents. And we've gone through many phases, many evolutions in these last 56 days, with negotiations with the administration, which have been very frustrating because we've been in over 20 hours of meetings with the administration at the University of Toronto, and there's still very little progress towards our demands. They're giving us breadcrumbs, and they're offering us committees and not actual commitments. towards divestment, disclosure, and cutting ties with Israeli academic institutions. So we continue to be here, and we continue to call for our 3 demands and to call for the end of the complicity between the University of Toronto and the genocide unfolding in Gaza right now. And we're going to stay here as long as it takes for our demands to be met.
Right. And will that continue until the fall of the next school year, if necessary?
Yeah, and for the foreseeable future, we're here. Yeah. Of course, there is the injunction coming up, so that's a bit in the air. But we're shocked and appalled that the University of Toronto is seeking a court order from the court to basically have the authorization for Toronto Police Services to come in and raid the encampment. This is the University of Toronto trying to intentionally criminalize over 170 of its students, and it's appalling. And we wait to see what the ruling from the judge is, which will happen in the next few days. So we're kind of in a limbo moment right now, but we're as committed as ever, and we're going to stay here as long as it takes for our demands to be met.
So in recent years, as I'm sure you know, several universities, at least in North America, have talked about decolonizing themselves. And I'm wondering whether U of T is one of those universities, and has anyone called them on that?
Yeah, I mean, as students, that is one of the central guiding principles of this encampment. Is we are offering a decolonial space in the center of campus, in the heart of campus. It took an encampment to create this space, but it is a decolonial a space for people of the Palestinian and allied community. I don't think university administration or even as an institution is decolonial in any way. If it were to really decolonize and center decolonization, then they would be meeting our 3 demands to divest, disclosure, and to cut ties. So far, we've seen that they're very attached to the status quo. They're very attached to their colonial legacies. They're proud of their colonial legacy. And we've had to basically enforce and create our own space, our own decolonial space. Right. And that has only happened due to, months and months and months and decades of work from protesters at this university.
And so just to be clear, the students are calling for a full divestment of from all the entities that the University of Toronto is invested in that's facilitating.
Right. Yeah, so we're calling for complete divestment from all armament companies. That's the demand number 1. And then there's disclosure, which we're expecting full disclosure, not partial disclosure.
Right.
We want disclosure of direct and indirect funds. And then cutting ties is, it's not a full academic boycott. It's only for Israeli academic institutions that are physically located on illegal settlements. Or Israeli academic institutions that sustain the apartheid, occupation, and genocide in some way of Gaza.
I'm wondering if you can speak to the kind of solidarity that is actually occurring here, because I'm noticing that there's so many groups from different cultures, different ethnicities, different religions, different political viewpoints even, all converging for Palestine.
Yeah, I mean, that's been one of the most beautiful things to see for me is the everyone is here and acknowledges and sees the interconnectedness of all our struggles, and we live by the principle that liberation for one means liberation for all. There is a wide range of students, faculty, alumni, staff here of multiple faiths, multiple backgrounds, multiple cultures, nationalities, and it is truly beautiful to see them all united under the Palestinian flag.
Only a few short days after speaking with those at the encampment, the University of Toronto was granted an injunction by a Canadian court to clear it, involving police if necessary. Frankly, I worried for all members of the encampment. I returned to the university encampment on the day its members, according to the injunction, had to leave. As I got nearer to the encampment, I noticed several members had packed their belongings and were some distance away from it. When I arrived at the encampment itself, which had been a constant presence for over 60 days, it was virtually empty. Seeing this felt surreal, but it was no defeat. The encampment had succeeded in exposing the University of Toronto as complicit in Israeli violence against the Palestinian people, as reflected by the street demonstration following the end of the encampment. This has further emboldened many to continue challenging the University of Toronto, as well as power more generally that oppresses and yes, routinely robs the lives of Palestinians. The encampment at the University of Toronto may have for now disappeared, but its spirit of Palestinian solidarity animating demonstrations like these taking place on campuses around the world, lives on.